Perspective on Florida Gateway College Television is sponsored by Nutrien. Nutrien, feeding the future.
Hello everyone and welcome to Perspective. This is a public affairs presentation of Florida Gateway College. My name is Mike McKee and my guest on the program is Esther Chung. She is the Board of County Commissioners for Columbia County, Office Manager for the County Commission. And we're here to talk about the census. Every 10 years, the U.S., as required by the Constitution, must do a census, a counting of all residents who live in America. We'll talk about the census and how you can get involved and how you can play your part when we come back. Don't go away.
What is the 2020 census? Every 10 years, the census records everyone living in this country. It's written in the Constitution and comes in a questionnaire that counts everyone who lives at your address on April 1st. The data can be used to inform funding for services like fire stations, schools, clinics, and representation that affect your community. Shape your future. Start here. Visit 2020census.gov.
Welcome back to Perspective on Florida Gateway College Television. And also I'd like to welcome the listeners on WCJX and WQHL radios for being a part of our program today. Esther Chung is the Office Manager for the Board of County Commissioners for Columbia County. She's also been tasked with the census, and the public service announcement was pretty accurate about what the census is all about, but your job is to make sure we're not undercounted.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Well, the census, like you just heard, is a count of every person living in America, in the U.S. and its territories. And it's done every 10 years as mandated by the Constitution. It takes a snapshot of our nation as well as gives us an outline and outlook for how it will affect our future. The overarching goal of the census is to count every person living in the U.S. once, only once, and in the right place.
Okay, and so it's important because a lot of things are determined, a lot of federal funding, grants that are done to develop infrastructure for roads, and it depends on what the census says. And
Correct.
So if we don't count everybody here, we're not applicable to get more money if it's available.
Right. So what happens is that the results of this census help determine how $675 billion, and that's with a B, billion dollars, will be distributed across the nation. And in fact, in the last census in 2010, Columbia County was undercounted by about 40% is what they estimate. And
so that means that we weren't able in that 10-year period. Now keep in mind, it's only done every 10 years,
correct.
So we're behind for a whole 10 years.
Yes, so that's why it's so important that we get the right numbers each census so that we have the opportunity to have, I guess, a grip on some of those monies.
Well, and again, the thing about this, and just so you know, the folks out there know, I serve on a committee that Esther chairs with the Board of County Commissioners on how we get the word out and how we better get information to people about reporting the fact that they live here and they are actually counted. So I go back to one of the counties, I think you said Monroe County in Florida, was maybe the highest reported county in the state of Florida?
Yes, so, and we're happy to have you on the
Cool.
committee. You're a great asset.
Thank you.
But actually in the past, it was Monroe County, and I believe, I don't have the numbers
It was in the
exactly,
90s, wasn't it?
But they were down in the 60s. And then they decided to do this push like we are doing here now, and to really get the word out and really have everyone know why it's so important and why we need to be counted. And they reached, I think, into the 80s or the 90 percentile.
When I saw 90%, I was like, wow. And 'cause I remember asking you the question, what did they do? And they said that they had gone and been proactive and allowed committees to of community leaders, and that's what it is. It's
Yes.
you've identified people that, and again, the reason we're doing this TV show is one of the reasons to get the word out. And so you've got people. If anybody would like to participate, they can, though. Correct? If
Absolutely.
they want to, hey, I have an idea of how to reach this population, they can call you.
Yes, anyone can give me a call or send me an email and be able to get involved that way, or you have the freedom to go ahead and create your own committees and in your own community and network of friends and family to be able to reach out and spread the word.
Now, for those who are not familiar with grant applications, you have to have an accurate population count. If your poverty level is a certain level, I mean, all the factors that go into giving you money to improve some sort of something that's going on in your community, whether it's a community development block grant, whether it's a Department of Economic Opportunity, economic development grant,
Right.
they all rely on information.
Correct.
And if it's underreported, you got less of a chance. If I understand it correctly, you have less of a chance of getting that money to improve your standard of living in your community.
Right. So depending on what the grant is, they have their own stipulations as to what is going to be required, and the numbers that they receive is determined by the census.
So again, it's very important that during this, well, let's talk about the time frame. We're in 2019 now.
Yes.
2020 is when the official census is done.
Correct.
What is the timeline for getting it done and saying, all right, we've reported all we know that live in Columbia County?
Right. So right now, this is just the information and the public education stage, and from there, we will in January. The census will go out and begin to count remote areas and also transient populations. So that includes certain areas of Alaska and individuals who are experiencing homelessness. Come February, they will move on to group quarters, which includes our nursing homes and our correctional facilities. And in March, everyone by that point, our general population, will have received an invitation to participate in the census, and it will give you information about how you can do that. And April 1st marks our Census Day 2020 officially, and by May, if you have not responded, that is when the census will go ahead and send out individuals in person to go ahead and enumerate those.
So this is a difficult job because you can find out where everybody lives. You can look at addresses, but then you look at, and I look at when we drive by a campground, and you see people with a Michigan tag that are staying at a campground,
Yes.
and they stay there during the winter months. Where do they get counted? And so, I mean, there's some things that kind of make it even more complicated.
Yes, so it's where you are at that moment. So it's where you are living on April 1st, 2020. And that's where you're counted.
Okay, so people can expect to get something in the mail when?
By March, mid-March is when you should really be expecting to get something in the mail.
Now, so should you wait for that to come, or is there, we mentioned in our committee meeting that there's a thing called self-reporting
Yes.
that you can do anytime?
Now the self-reporting, now that will not be available until that March date, whenever you receive it. So when you receive it in the mail as the little reminder in the invitation to enumerate yourself, that is when it'll be available to go ahead and do that.
So again, it's important that you understand the process, because when is this is all over in the beginning of summer, isn't it not?
Yes, yes. So
And I don't think a lot of people realize that the census is done June 30th?
I believe so. That is like the final end date.
So if you're not counted by June 30th, you're not counted.
You're not counted.
And you have to wait until 2020 or 2030 in order to
Right.
participate in the next census.
Right. And you may be in need in some services or some opportunities, but because you weren't counted in 2020, you might lose out on that opportunity.
You know, another thing, and we're going to take a break here in a second these public service announcements that the census has done are very effective. They're very well done. And this next PSA that we're going to watch has to do with representatives. And it kind of, in fact, let's look at the public service announcement, and then Esther and I will talk a little bit about what it means for us.
How does the 2020 census affect representation? There are 435 seats in the House of Representatives. These get distributed to the 50 states by population, and an accurate census response helps your state get the right amount of seats. States with smaller populations get at least one, while states with larger populations might get more. Shape your future. Start here. Visit 2020census.gov.
And Esther, that was sort of a civics lesson.
Yes.
Because you now know that there are 435 representatives, there are 100 senators. I mean, that stays the same.
Correct.
Every year. Each state gets 2, no matter how much their population is. But some states lose population.
Yes, absolutely. And when you lose population, you actually may lose representatives, because those representatives are done, like it said, by population. And currently, Florida has 27 representatives out of those 435. And with this coming census, those representatives are reapportioned, and we have the opportunity to possibly lose, maintain, or even gain a representative. And as a swing state and as a winner-take-all state, you know, that can have huge ramifications on upcoming elections and policy.
Well, and again, you look at, and there's a trend, and if you watch the news or watch trends like we do, we have to keep track of how our population grows because of who we market our education programs to and what the workforce needs are going to be and things like that. So you notice that a lot of northern states, especially high tax states like New York and Illinois and New Jersey and some of those other places, people are saying, you know what, we're moving. We're going to no income tax state like Florida.
Yes.
They're going to no income tax states like Texas. And so the southern states, not only do we have great weather down here, but we also have a favorable taxes down here, so people are moving.
Right.
And so what their loss is, if say New York loses 2 representatives, we may get 1, Texas may get 1, California may get 1. You notice in that public service announcement, California had a lot of representatives.
A lot, yes.
They're the most populous state in the country, and so they are represented by a proportional amount of representatives.
Absolutely.
So it's very important that for, again, our House of Representatives, that we have an accurate count, and because it's going to be important in every 2 years and at least every 4 years. So let's talk about where's the information going? What type of information are you typically going to be asked?
So on the census, it's going to be very simple. It's quick and easy. It'll ask you simple questions like your age, sex, race, how many people are living in your home, and that includes children. But more importantly is what's not going to be asked. And what the census will never ask you is your social security number, your bank or credit card information. They will never ask you to make a donation or do anything in regards to a political party. So if you do see something like that, please do not respond. It is more than likely fraud.
You know, Esther, the job you have is pretty tough in that you know they're going to be scams.
Yes.
That they're going to be sort of like anything else. You know, there's Medicare scams out there. There's all kinds of scams, and people are going to take advantage of this. So a lot of people are going to be skeptical to begin with,
Yes,
because you know
absolutely.
nobody wants their identity on the web and having identity fraud, and so you're skeptical, and you consider an older person who may not be as savvy on the internet and with media, they're not sure what's going on. So how do you overcome that? Do you just, I mean, you mentioned that there are some things that you just don't, you're not going to be asked.
Right. So that's one of the main things, to know that, if you do see something suspicious, you can always, look at it and see if they're asking you these questions that we know that aren't going to be on there, and to inform yourself. Another thing you can do is that, for those who are less tech savvy and aren't as familiar with using the internet, they also do have a toll-free number that you can call, and they can help verify for you if that is something that is truly from the Census Bureau.
Otherwise, you just wait for the questionnaire to come in the mail.
Yes.
And fill it out. So what happens if the census, the folks that run the census think that you're not getting a good enough response? Do they look at trends and say, Columbia County ought to have at least this many people by now? Is that how they look at it?
Well, so they look at, like you said, they look at some trends, but they also look at, they have real-time enumeration. So when they go onto their apps or whatever that they use to help enumerate, they will see in real time which homes have enumerated and which homes have not. And so they'll be able to identify which homes that they need to go out and knock on a door and find out some information.
So, but this is for every adult and child, correct?
And
now, again,
child.
There may be a misconception that it's only adult population that gets counted, but children are counted as well.
Absolutely, children are counted, because your child right now might be 15 years old, but come 10 years when the next census is going to occur, they'll be 25 and an adult. And you don't want to miss out on those years. And so every individual, newborn to senior citizen, needs to be counted.
Now, do they put ages when they're counting people?
Yes.
So they are figuring out what the, for instance, early childhood care, what those needs would be because of that number of kids.
Absolutely. And I think, like the PSA said before, those dollars and the statistics that we get from this census will help inform whether we need more schools, we need more hospitals, if we need to invest in better roads, larger roads for populations.
Well, you mentioned that the information is used by the state and federal government to do grant funding, but the county commission also uses this information.
Absolutely.
To say, hey, look where the growth is, and so it has a better, an accurate accounting of where people are moving.
Right. So this may be a nationwide count, but all those numbers end up trickling down to, even at this local level in Columbia County and in Lake City, to help us, give us information. And it's not just the county. Businesses look at it and determine whether to build a new factory or to open up a new store. Real estate developers also use it to see if there is a need for new homes or revitalization of older neighborhoods.
You make a really good point that companies don't locate into your area unless the demographics, which is what a census is finding out what number of adults are in your community, what they're, so it's very important if we want to grow and we want to have the nice restaurants that the big chains that we have in other big cities. They're not going to come here if the census numbers don't warrant it.
Right. So they're going to look at these numbers, and depending on what they reflect, they will determine whether or not it would be a good and smart business savvy move to open up a new store.
So when we talk about responding, the best way to do it is via mail, but there's some other ways to do it. Now, you mentioned the app. Is that just as easy?
So a little correction there. So there are 3 different ways that we can enumerate ourselves, and the traditional ways are telephone or by mail through the mailing that you'll get. However, for the first time ever for the 2020 census, we are able to do it online. And even more so, we can do it through our mobile device. Now, it's not going to be an app. However, there will be...
Close.
Yes.
Pretty close.
There won't be a specific app for it. However, you can use, you can go online on your computer or on your mobile device and be able to fill out the census there.
And they're going to ask you, you can't just fill it out. You have to, there's going to be some questions to make sure that you're on the up and up and you're not just over counting. The census
Correct.
is they don't want to have that where there's some thought that people stack the number of
Stack
people.
the cards.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we want more money, so we're just going to over count ourselves. So let me ask a question. There may be some folks out there that say, you know what, I'd kind of like to volunteer and be a part of this and help Columbia County grow and make an accurate accounting of our population. How do they do that?
Well, like I mentioned in the beginning, you can just do it by simply going out and spreading the word, letting your neighbor, your friends, your church group, your rec league know and spread the word. You can also create your own committee if you so choose that's dedicated to going out and letting everyone know that the census is coming and what to be expecting, and also debunking some of those rumors that people may come across and hear. And on top of that, the Census Bureau itself is recruiting thousands of people nationwide.
They're paying pretty good, from what I understand.
From what I understand, I believe, I looked yesterday, and I believe for Columbia County, it's listed as, I think, $16 an hour.
Well, and again, folks, this is a part-time job. This is not
Correct,
This is not going to be a
temporary.
long-term thing. But if you're able and are looking for something to do from March until June, this may be something. And I guess training is going on and has been going on for many months and getting folks ready to go out and be a counter. But that's not a volunteer opportunity. But there are volunteer opportunities. Esther and I, again, are on this committee. You've got faith-based folks that are willing to help and talk to their congregations
Absolutely.
about this. So again, if there's a church group or a church in the community that would like to help out, they can call you.
Absolutely, absolutely. They can call me or email me at 386-758-1005, or they can email me at echung@columbiacountyfla.com.
Right. And are there other opportunities for people to volunteer other than getting just the word out, or are there other things that they can do?
Well, mainly it's just getting the word out. And of course, at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, to count yourself. You're an important individual and you should have yourself be counted, and you're a part of the community. So to make sure that you count yourself come April 1st on that census day.
All right. And the last of our public service, I want to thank Richie for putting these public service announcements and getting these public service announcements. Very important that we try to, when we're doing a show on a certain topic, that we actually show a public service announcement that has to do with that topic, and he's done a great job. Our last public service announcement has to do with the census data and how the census data is going to be used. Let's watch this public service announcement from the U.S. Census.
How will 2020 census data be used? Where there are more people, there are more needs for public services. That's why the census is used by the government to inform funding decisions each year. But that's not all. It's also used by nonprofits to inform services, by businesses to create jobs, and even by students for school projects. Understanding how the population changes helps us shape communities across the country for the better. Shape your future. Start here. Visit 2020census.gov.
Again, very well done by the U.S. Census. We are going to run these in programming that we do up until April,
Yes.
and maybe even June. But so let's kind of recap that information is going out now. Information is through the committees that are
Correct.
working, and I'm assuming they're not just in our county, but they're in other counties in Florida.
Yes, across Florida and also across the nation.
So information Now, when the census starts, April 1st, if you see something that may look like a scam, doesn't sound right, you can make a phone call and say, hey, this is kind of a fraudulent thing, so law enforcement could get involved if they find out that someone's doing it on a local level, trying to scam somebody out of some credit card numbers or things like that. But reporting begins on April 1st. It's going to end June 30th. Very important that you count yourself, reply to the census, and don't be afraid. Again, it happens every 10 years, and it's something that our Constitution requires. Would you like to add anything? I mean, we can run your number and your email address if people would like more information. Anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I guess the main thing is, there are some fears about what this information is used for and if it's safe. And I want to assure everyone that it is absolutely safe and is protected by federal law, and the information is not shared with any other governmental agency or court system, and it will not be provided to anyone, let's say the FBI, the CIA, Department of Homeland Security, or ICE. And so it's absolutely secure, and that we just want to encourage you to please participate in the census, and let's get our numbers up.
It's hearing you say that, it's terrible how skeptical we really are about things, and again, this makes life much harder for the folks who work on the census every year and combine the numbers, the massive numbers that they're going to be. Let me ask you, and you may not know the answer, when is the census information going to be available? When we go back and look back and say, oh wow, Columbia County had an increase in population. Is it going to be toward the end of the year?
As far as the specifics are concerned, that's not available for decades. However, the individual overview, I guess, of each county, that will be available, I believe, by the end of the year.
Okay.
By the end of 2020.
So we'll be able to see the results of our count at that time. If you'd like more information, again, you can call Esther at the county office. Her number is 386-755-4100. E. Chung at Columbia County, Florida, FLA.com is her email address if you want to be able to volunteer, or if you've got an issue when the census takes place with anything that you think may not be right, or if you just have any general questions about the census, you can call Esther. This is Esther's life here, is it not? I mean, you seem like this is all you're going to be doing, or a great majority of what you're doing is the census.
Well, it's a big part of it, especially because it will have ripple effects for the next 10 years. So it's very important that we go ahead and get this all done now and put the effort forward.
Well, again, I don't think the county commission, they believe it's important enough to have someone specific like yourself to handle this versus what we've done in the past. Esther, thank you so much for the information. I hope this has been very informative to our viewers and our listeners to perspective. Please count yourself when it comes time in April of 2020. Until next time, I'm Mike McKee. So long.